It's an ad to give you confidence in the producer. You can imagine what the product's like. Hare Krishna, everyone. And we are continuing reading about Srila Prabhupada from Brahmananda Swami. Namo Vishnuviraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivashari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Brahmananda Prabhu ki jai. Swami. Yeah. So we're on the chapter, a happening on Lower East Side, and this is a section called Transcendental Sound Vibration. Sound was central to Swamiji's teaching. He could perceive Krishna in sound, particularly in sounds that were vibrated with spiritual intent. For example, when he would speak at 26 Second Avenue, he was always anxious that it be properly recorded. According to Brahmananda, quote, Swamiji called it tape record Sankirtan. At 26 Second Avenue, he had a big tape recorder, an Akai recorder, that someone had given him. This was a big, oversized machine like they use in recording studios. It was very heavy. And I was assigned to carry it down from his apartment to the storefront every evening. Then Gargamuni would record the lecture. Afterwards, we, the small center of interested students, would go back upstairs to Swamiji's apartment with him. There we would sit with him and he would say, so now, play the recorder. And Gargamuni would play the tape of the lecture that Swamiji had just given. And he would sit there listening to it so intently. We would just watch him relish it. It was not like he enjoyed this because it was something he had just spoken. Rather, this was something that was extraordinarily interesting to him, as if someone else was speaking. It wasn't that he wanted to hear the sound of his own voice, but he was listening, learning. We came to know that he was hearing Krishna directly, as he often told us. Krishna was speaking through him. Unquote. Sound vibration was at the basis of Vedic philosophy. The world was created by sound, and through sound, one could become liberated from material existence. The Vedanta Sutra says, Anavriti Shabdat. In the beginning was the Word. And it was the Word that will see us through all the way to love of God. This was Swamiji's teaching in a nutshell. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one could transcend material existence and eventually attain the spiritual realm. As if in pursuit of this end, Krishna arranged the Happening album, already on the movement's history, early on in the movement's history, This was an LP recording adventure that helped promote Swamiji's mission in a big way. Interestingly, neither he nor the devotees were trying to procure a record deal at the time. For decades, even while still in India, Swamiji saw printing books as the mainstay of his mission, a vision bequeathed to him by his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Quote, if you ever get money, print books. And further, preach in the English language. This was the mandate his teacher had given him as far back as 1922 upon their first meeting. But during New York's cold November of 1966, a longtime record producer, Alan Cullman, happened to read the East Village Other article already mentioned, which had come out 1 month earlier. Here he learned that the Hare Krishna movement, new to the West, was an age-old tradition in India. The article introduced the world and Kalman to Swamiji and the devotees, focusing on the mystical effect of their sacred singing. In fact, Kalman was so intrigued by the article that he and his wife went down to see the devotees in Thompson Square Park, where they witnessed kirtan for the first time. I heard the chant and I gasped, describes Kalman. The sound was vibrant, from another realm. It gave me a strange feeling of something magical. This just had to be my next record, I thought to myself. There was no question in my mind. Kalman had owned Ribbon Records in the late 50s and early 60s, producing mainly rock and roll material, but the label didn't really have any significant hits. By the mid-60s, the company morphed into Pixie Records, which fared only slightly better. However, he enjoyed some modicum of success with his third venture, Happening Records. He used the label to produce a few spoken word LPs, giving an audible forum to people like Timothy Leary, Malcolm X, and Mark Lane, who at the time were quite vocal in his theories about the Kennedy assassination. It was a novel approach in the recording industry, and people were quickly catching on. Kalman carefully considered what he had read about the Hare Krishna devotees and concluded that they would be perfect for his new strategy in recording. Ideal, in fact, because they would chant and then explain the philosophy behind the chant. This, he knew, would play into his spoken word technique like a charm. After discussion with a few business partners, he decided to drop by 26 Second Avenue to propose his idea to Swamiji. Carol, his wife, called to make an appointment and got Brahmananda on the phone. After she briefly described their plans, Swamiji's young disciple agreed that it was a good idea, making an appointment for them to meet with the Swami the next day. Swamiji's LP, that's the heading. We went in to meet Brahmananda's guru, says Carol, and I didn't know what to expect, but he was delightful, charming. Alan told him the plan to make a recording of the chant, along with explanations, to fit in with the spoken word concept, and Swamiji loved it. He got so excited, he explained that the chanting is important, but that the philosophy behind the chanting is equally important. So he would be happy to do both on the album. I'll never forget what he said after that. Quote, "The most important thing you can do for Krishna, or God, is to share his name with others," unquote. He told us that Krishna and his name are spiritually equal, the same, and that's why the chanting is so effective. So he was really into making the album, which made Alan very happy, of course. Interestingly, the night before the recording session, which was scheduled for 2 weeks after this initial meeting in December, a guest walked into 26 Second Avenue with a wooden percussive instrument resembling a mridanga, the two-headed clay drum used in Vaishnav kirtans. Although common at Hare Krishna temples today, at the time it was unknown among Swamiji's followers. As the kirtan began, Swamiji noticed the drum from his dais. His eyes opened wide and he gestured to Brahmananda to approach the boy and to bring the instrument to him, which he did. In a few minutes, immersed in the kirtan, Swamiji was playing the instrument like a master musician, and the devotees were enthralled. This was a side of their guru they had not seen before. Quote, "We must have this drum for tomorrow's recording," said Swamiji, and Brahmananda convinced the instrument's owner to leave it with them for the recording session. The next day, the devotees made their way up to Beltone Studios on 51st Street and Broadway, directly across from Colony Records, then a popular retail outlet for record albums. Belltone was a hot studio, says Alan, very much in demand at the time. Rupanugadas remembers going with Swamiji and the devotees to the studio. We took my old Volkswagen camper. I think this is another Rupanuga. We took my old Volkswagen camper, he says, with Swamiji and some others. There must have been another car too, or some devotees probably went up there by subway. It was a really cold day, and we couldn't go in right away. We had to wait in the lobby for a long time. Little Anthony and the Imperials, a major rock and roll group at the time, were recording and given precedence because of their celebrity. Since they would be exceeding their expected time limit by over an hour, Swamiji decided to go for a walk with the devotees while they waited. The entire troupe journeyed to nearby Times Square in the 42nd Street area. Brahmananda recalls the incident, quote, Swamiji would point to various things in Times Square area and make philosophical comments, noting the sophistication with which technology could be used for degradation and darkness. Finally, we came upon a huge Camel cigarette billboard with real smoke blowing from the man's mouth. He said that this particular area was the world's center for sense gratification. At one point, a matronly lady who seemed drunk bumped into him, and she turned around and said, quote, "Who are you?" He just answered, "I'm a Hindu monk." He smiled at her and we walked on. She wouldn't have understood that he was a Vaishnava, coming from a non-sectarian spiritual tradition. So he just said something she could understand, something within her radar, unquote. They soon returned to the studio ready to record. Swamiji sat on a mat in the center, accommodating the engineers who arranged the microphones and assigned each devotee a place to set up according to her particular instrument. They only wanted 2 pairs of kartals, but approved the pair of rhythm sticks and several other instruments the devotees had brought on their own. They also wanted some devotees to clap to give the recording a live sound. What's rhythm sticks? You know what rhythm sticks are?
This is just 2 wooden sticks which they clap to each other.
Huh?
I think like 12 days, two sticks you just...
I guess.
We started recording immediately, says Alan, and Swamiji burst into the Hare Krishna chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. His tone was exotic, it was deep and mesmerizing. I had recorded a lot of people in my time, professional singers and so on. But Swamiji was especially captivating, infectious. He was born to do this. What time is it?
8, exactly.
8. Swamiji did about 6 different songs. He continues, traditional stuff from his lineage, but most of it didn't make it onto the album. The tapes are lying around in the studio archive somewhere. Great stuff. We were mainly interested in the Hare Krishna chant, though, which was becoming popular at the time. Rupanuga shares some further details of the recording session. Quote, a man came around to check instruments to see how the microphones picked them up and what the sound quality was like. I played 2 bells that sort of sounded like kartals. Hayagriva was playing tambura. Roy Ram played those South American wooden sticks. Kirtanananda played the harmonium. That means that they pumped it. Doesn't matter what key they were singing in, they just pumped the harmonium. That was playing the harmonium. Loaned to us by Allen Ginsberg, but he just pumped on the bellows. He really didn't know how to play. And Swamiji played that 2-headed Indian drum so incredibly. There were others too. I remember Brahmananda was clapping too loud. so the engineer came in to adjust the volume. We just kept playing, following Swamiji's lead. When we went overtime, Kalman from the engineer booth waved his hands to indicate that we should start wrapping it up. So Swamiji saw that and started going faster. Satsvarup Das Goswami affords readers greater detail in his Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Quote, Alan came out of the studio. It was great, Swami, great. Would you? Would you like to just go right ahead and read the address now, or are you too tired? With polite concern, pale, befreckled Alan Kalman peered through his thick glasses at Prabhupada, Swamiji, who appeared tired. But he replied, no, I'm not tired. Then the devotee sat back in the studio to watch and listen as Prabhupada read his prepared statement. After reading it, the producer tells Srila Prabhupada that they have about 10 more minutes on side 2 to fill. He again asks Srila Prabhupada if he is tired. Prabhupada says that he isn't, and they start to chant again. This time he sang what was titled on the album as Chant to the Mercy of the Spiritual Master. We know it as the Samsara prayers. After the song, which was done in one take, Srila Prabhupada said, now we are tired. The night was over. However, as the studio engineer replayed the take, Srila Prabhupada stood up and started to dance to the song the devotees had just recorded. Now you have made your best record, Prabhupada told Mr. Kalman as he left the studio for the freezing Manhattan evening. Prabhupada got into the front seat of the Volkswagen bus while the Hare Krishna chanters climbed into the back with their instruments, and Rupa Ganuga drove them back home, back to the Lower East Side, unquote. It's rarely mentioned that this record was, in a sense, the beginning of ISKCON's widespread book distribution in the West. Although Swamiji had brought his initial printing of the Srimad Bhagavatam from India, he only had very few copies, which he sold early on when the movement was just starting. A small book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, and several pamphlets were brought from India too, but not enough for wide-scale distribution, which is what Swamiji wanted. It was this album that was sent to Macmillan Publishing Company, leading to a publishing deal that resulted in Swamiji's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Further, George Harrison had procured a copy earlier on, contacting Kalman personally to find out about legality and copyright so he could use it on Apple's Radha Krishna Temple album, and eventually in his own song, My Sweet Lord. This led to George's endorsement of Swamiji's Krishna book, which along with Sri Ishwapad, Nectar of Devotion, and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya were his first 5 books, all released after the Happening album. Indeed, because of the work of Alan and Carol Kalman, spurred on by the grace of Swamiji, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra was heard on radio stations, TV shows, and found the popular media around the world before massive book distribution engulfed ISKCON and everyone else. I need some water. Oh, there's my watch. It was like that. Book distribution engulfed ISKCON. There was, in the very beginning, there were no gurukulas, nobody living outside. There was no, there was nothing. There were no activities that we have now. There was only one thing that devotees did in Krishna consciousness. That's they sold books and they did Harinam on the streets and did Sunday program. So the whole movement was just focused on one activity. Now we have so many other things. We have fundraising, we have, as I mentioned, school, we have other programs, outreach programs, contacting devotees, Pandavasayan, and like that. But then there was only one. And that's what sometimes devotees miss, or they lament that it's no longer like that, which is not a defect. It's not a fault, it's just sort of a natural consequence that when you only do one thing and everyone does one thing, that's all they think about. It brings a phenomenal energy, concentration, and a gulf. Back to Godhead magazine. Noticing that Swamiji was keen, it's very light printing, very small printing. Gargamuni located what was to become ISKCON's first press. He had read in a newspaper that a country club in Queens was trying to sell their small A.B. Dick equipment. A.B. Dick was well-known American manufacturer of copy machines and office supplies, and they were forerunners in the business of quick printing. Their machines had high visibility in numerous storefront shops throughout the country, offering good copies at a cheap price. Starting in the 1960s, just after Swamiji procured his printing press, Xeroxing became the preferred mode of photocopying, replacing A.B. Dick's older mimeograph technology. With some prodding from Gargamuni, Swamiji decided to go out to Queens to see the machine. When he arrived with several disciples, he noted that the press was old, but still in good condition. The manager of the country club, anxious to sell it, asked for $250. But Swamiji was a cautious buyer. He looked at the machine carefully while telling the manager about his movement and the nature of his mission. In the course of their talking, a second press was mentioned, and the manager explained that in point of fact he really wanted to unload both of them. To this, Swamiji said that he was willing to pay the requested $250, but only if he could walk away with both machines. After all, Swamiji offered the country club was not using them, nor did they intend to use them. Moreover, he said, it would be good if they could help his urgent spiritual mission. Who could argue with Swamiji? Before anyone could say Hare Krishna, Gargamuni and Kirtananda were placing both machines in the van, bringing ISKCON's first printing press back to 26 2nd Avenue. And Srila Prabhupada never wanted to pay for things. Even here, he's bargaining. He's getting 2 for 1, but usually Prabhupada would just ask for a donation. Even when they went to see that Detroit building, Prabhupada would just say, "It's my mission." He says, "So you should just donate it." He said, "I wouldn't come here to show you this building so you could ask to donate it." But Prabhupada, I don't know any instance that someone actually gave to Prabhupada, but he would always ask. He would always ask. And who knows? Somewhere someone will give. So here, but then at least Prabhupada would, and Prabhupada was super expert. The best one, Ramana wasn't there, that was just Tamal Krishna Maharaj, is with Dai Nippon, which was a Japanese printer, one of the major printers in the world, and how Prabhupada secured contract for printing BTG, Krishna book, and maybe something else. Soon after setting up the press, Swamiji asked Hayagriva and Roy Ram to become the first Western editors of his magazine, Back to Godhead. In India, this had been his personal service to his own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. In fact, he founded the magazine in as far back as 1944, while still a married man. In the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Satsvarup Das Goswami writes of the magazine's earliest days, and this is even smaller, quote, "From his front room at 6 Sitakanta Banerjee, Abai conceived, wrote, edited, and typed the manuscript for a magazine. He designed the logo, a long rectangle across the top of the page. In the upper left-hand corner was a figure of Lord Chaitanya, effulgent with rays of light like rays from the sun. In the lower corner were silhouettes of a crowd of people in darkness, but groping to receive light from Lord Chaitanya. And between Lord Chaitanya and the people, the title unfurled like a banner, Back to Godhead. In the lower right-hand corner was a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, seated at his writing, looking up thoughtfully as he composed. Above the logo ran the motto, Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no nescience." Someone knows the quote?
Surya.
Krishna.
Aya aya indika.
Yahan Krishna Tahan. No one else knows? You should know. This is where it comes from. Chaitanya Charitamrita, back home, back to Godhead. The motto. Krishna Surya Samahaya Maya Handakar Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi. Yes, what I wanted to say was that Srila Prabhupada was he did not like change. Not that he did not like change in terms of adapting. Prabhupada that was his whole principle. Utility is the principle. Srila Prabhupada's whole approach to spreading Krishna consciousness was anything that would actually distribute chanting of the holy name. But on the other hand, Srila Prabhupada really didn't like unnecessary change. In other words, change that didn't make any difference. So, for instance, you see Bhagavatam. The first canto is, well, in some editions, generally you just have the blue. But Srila Prabhupada originally designed all three. It's 3 volumes, the original, and the 3 volumes are strong blue, lighter blue, and then a yellowish color. And then the other Bhagavatams, he changed, and he wanted deities in the front. It was Radhalanda Nishwara and I don't know what was the other deities. Anyway, so on second canto and then third canto, and they started having actually a picture from the inside of the book on the outside of the book. So when devotees were talking to Srila Prabhupada, well, Prabhupada in a library, when you have a library of books, the same, then they're somehow or another design coded, color coded, etc. So they presented Prabhupada the color code, which did away with first canto, actually it was first canto, second canto, and third, and that everything was just a picture, painting on the front cover and solid color. Prabhupada said, no way. I designed these personally. Why do you want to change? Well, Prabhupada, it looks better. To you it looks better. To me this looks better. He didn't want to change. So that's why now only the first canto, but if we were to print it in the way that Srila Prabhupada originally envisaged, which is 60 volumes, then you would see the original colors and things that, and Prabhupada just stuck to that, especially in English. He said you can never change the format of the books, because now there's a lot of formats. For instance, in Italy, they have these sort of classical, that's the way books are known in Italy, these classical gold-blocked covers. So, but Prabhupada said, all right for other languages, but English, never change English. So many things, devotees. Installed deities, I won't say which deities, installed deities, they decided to make some changes. So they started sculpting away on the deities. The early deities, they have clothes on, which makes dressing difficult. So chip off some things. Prabhupada heard it, he just couldn't believe it. He said, chipping away at installed deities. And other things that in ISKCON devotees wanted to change things, especially change things that he established. And it isn't that sometimes they were so significant and may have not been so significant to Prabhupada, but this whole principle of change means that what the founder Acharya establishes, now you can change. And so we see that, the concept that Srila Prabhupada, for instance, preached about in Guru, now, we're going to change. That's been a real focus of change. But it's so emphatically, strongly written down in Prabhupada's books. So Prabhupada didn't want devotees to change. He wanted that fidelity to what he had actually given. Let's finish this and then chapter, and then next chapter 4 is Krishna comes to ISKCON. Between 1944 and 1960, Swamiji, then Abai, a householder, published most of the issues issues almost single-handedly. The magazine was then a tabloid, one sheet folded in half, making a 4 pages of type. He wrote nearly all the articles, oversaw the printing, and sold or gave out every copy, 1,000 per issue, mostly by approaching people on the street. So Prabhupada knew what book distribution was about. This was going on for many a year. 1,000 BTGs Prabhupada would sell. In those days, it was a struggle to produce Back to Godhead. In the very beginning, after Swamiji had selected a printer and a distributor, he was denied paper. Because of World War II, India had a paper shortage. He persisted, however, finally received permission to print his first issue, 44 pages. Throughout the years, the publication schedule of Back to Godhead was irregular. After its beginning in 1944, only a few issues were released, and released and publication was resumed in 1952, and then again in 1956. It stopped for a while and started up again in 1958, and then again in 1960. Some were in Hindi, but most were in English, for Swamiji's main directive from his spiritual master was to convey the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in the English language. From the final issues published in India in the 1960s, it is evident that Swamiji was leaning towards book production with those issues containing excerpts from books in progress. Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu appearing in the magazine with transliterations, word-for-word translations, and purports, and Easy Journey to the Other Planets were highlights. Now, soon after initiating his movement on Western shores, he would resume the publication of his magazine with his loving disciples. He had set up the press in the temple room so Krishna himself could see the printing going on, the beginning of a movement that would spread Lord Chaitanya's teachings around the world. This would be effected through chanting parties, yes, but no less through the medium of the printed word. Gargamuni and Brahmananda would often work on the magazine late into the night. Gargamuni with ink all over his clothes. Swamiji would sometimes come down into the temple room on certain evenings just to watch his dedicated boys print and collate his magazine. The Swami would chant japa, quietly reciting the Mahamantra and beads, and think about how the simple printing press would help spread his spiritual master's teachings so far from his native India. Swamiji wanted BTG to be as popular as Time, Life, or Reader's Digest, and while it never reached that standard, at least in terms of popularity, it is still a worldwide magazine 48 years after it was re-established at 26 2nd Avenue. As I was reading, I realized that many of you don't even know or wouldn't even have experience perhaps of magazines in a printed format that usually just go online to read things and see things. It was really a different world when we were young, when we were your age, and I don't know when, I guess maybe in the turn of the millennium, real change began, serious change. But then when there was no internet, no form of World Wide Web or any of these things, then newspapers were a very big thing, because that's the only way people would get news, and magazines. So these were very, very popular venues. Now, not so much. I don't know what the newspaper magazine, but at that time, there were certain magazines like Time, Life, and then Reader's Digest wasn't really a magazine, it was a summary of books. If you wanted to know books, you know Reader's Digest? Really? Why was in Hungary there's Reader's Digest? So, yeah, and you could, read what books are about in this Reader's Digest, and so many other things were there. But these were printed in the multi-millions. Similarly, there were religious organizations, religious magazines. Now, one magazine that I know we used to always get was the Watchtower, which was the Mormons. Jehovah's, that's right. Jehovah's Witnesses. They were so polite and so nice that although, my mother would get the magazine, but anyway, she didn't believe or follow anything. So these were like, something like in English language, and I mean, this was like long time ago. They printed 40 million a month, and then other languages, who knows what goes on now. How much these are printed, and this is Jehovah's. They go door to door once a week. They always come knocking on the door. So magazines were very, very big. And Srila Prabhupada envisaged the BTG would be the commentary on spiritual issues and the ultimate authority on spiritual issues, and that it would be like these big magazines, multi-million. As far as I know, we hit a million for a few months, ISKCON. And that was really ISKCON North America, USA. So we hit a million, but it never really stayed there over a long period of time. But that was Jugrada Damodar days as well. So it was, Prabhupada really liked that magazine. Now, it is distributed, but it's not distributed nearly in the quantities that it was at that time. And specifically, this was like Srila Prabhupada's personal project. So Prabhupada wanted that devotees continue these things and not let them decrease. Even in Hungary, we do BTG just so hard to get devotees to sell them. I don't understand that Prabhupada's Mahabig books and BTG magazines, these were probably what Prabhupada emphasized. These were like Prabhupada's blood. There's so many other books that we have, some of them which, I mean, most of them, of those books, were not either spoken by Prabhupada, written by Prabhupada, or even, authorized in the time by Prabhupada. Prabhupada mission was Bhagavatam and BTG. And when we do those things and distribute those things, it can be distributed through the internet, which, for instance, in Turkey, they do the BTG like that. Beautiful, beautiful production. Or on paper. The electronic form is good as long as there's electrons. If you run out of electricity, then none of those forms of communication are really helpful. And none of those forms of literature are helpful. So once it's printed on good paper. It can last for hundreds of years. Doesn't depend on anything except eyes. And fortunately, devotees have two eyes. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Brahmananda Prabhu ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari 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 Bo.